And Angela, you can kick off. Go.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Zoom. It's never fun to listen to an hour of me drone on Zoom. So if you would like to give us your feedback, please interrupt me. I'm more than happy not to listen to my own voice. As Kathy was saying, there will be time for you to give your feedback and give your information, and you may find that you don't want that shared in a forum beyond this. So if that's the case, please tell Kathy and we can work on a way of editing it out. All right, so I'm Safety Ange. I have been doing good old health and safety for about 20 odd years now, and come across a few lovely situations myself where I've had to de-escalate. Some of which I have nailed and others of which I have completely stuffed up, and I've been blooming lucky not to get punched in the face. So I'll talk about ones where I'm awesome and also ones where I'm pretty blooming useless. And I'm hoping that you'll share yours so we can get a better variety. You're from a range of organisations, and so your experiences are going to be quite different to mine. So the more that you can chuck yours in, the better other members that have joined us will actually be able to relate to and work on a better way forward. Right, so let's get into it. You're going to have my details after this, so if there's anything you wish to discuss privately, you're welcome to give us a call and we can have a chat, or we can catch up for a coffee. All right.
So I'm going to share my screen now.
Yep.
Let me know. You tell me what.
All right, we'll go through one bit of information before we do.
Okay.
All right, so de-escalation. We want to come away with some great tips and tricks to actually be able to manage a situation, but we need to work out what that situation is even going to look like. So what would unacceptable, aggressive and violent behaviours identify as in your organisation? It's going to be different for everyone. I'm going to give a few examples. If you've got some more, please chuck us them. So raising of the voice, getting really angry and seeing that chest puff and the jaw clench and that fist clench, even to the point of potentially trying to take a swing at you. So, but every situation is going to be different, and you're going to experience this in multiple ways in different settings. Some of you are more clinical based and on a one-on-one, others are having to deal with this via a reception or a counter. So we're all human. We're not going to get this 100% right 100% of the time, but it's about understanding those aggressive behaviours and working out how we wish to deal with them when we're confronted with them. So why do people actually behave in an aggressive manner? If there's so many factors that feed into that, if you're in for example, a social work setting, you'll be seeing a client multiple times, you'll build up a good understanding of who they are, if they've got any mental health conditions, any drug abuse, any underlying factors that are likely to bubble up and see aggressive behaviour. Whereas if you're behind a counter and just seeing randoms come in to reception or to your organisation, they're anyone and everyone, and we won't know if there's underlying behaviour that could impact, or if they're just having a blooming bad day. And something we say or do, or the person next to them says or does, actually impacts on their ability to cope, and it's the straw that breaks the camel's back, and they have that reaction of aggressive and unwanted violent behaviour. So now if we bring up the first of the 11 de-escalation tips.
Right. Yeah. That one.
All right, and to slide 2.
That one.
Cool. So we're going to go through 11 tips. This is a
oops, sorry. Oh, hang on. Sorry, too fast.
So we're going to go through the 11 tips today and look at how to apply them. Some of these well and truly overlap, so you'll hear me say things more than once.
And can I just button. So I will email you out the stuff after we've done it.
Cool, excellent. So you can go back to it and see how best to apply it in your setting. My expectation at the end of this is, you know, it's lovely to have this conversation and to hear some training and hopefully interact with it. But at the end of the day, it adds limited value unless we apply it back in our own organisation. Every organisation is different and we need a bespoke way of managing it, which is why you can give me a call and have a chat, working out your environment, the physical environment that you work in, and whether you've even got an escape route, the kind of people that you are having to work with that display challenging behaviour, and the kind of culture that you've got around that as to whether you've got someone who's got your back, if you feel isolated and alone, or if things are piling up, because these all make a massive difference as to how we manage it. So, de-escalation. It's around support rather than suppression. It's about being human. We all have our moments. We all have those days where we just have a response, whether it's at home with the family and the kids just keep pressing your buttons to the point where you flick that switch and go rah, or when we're driving down the road and that lovely person pulls in front of us and cuts us off and we have to slam on the brakes to miss them. Or if we're in an organisation setting and we're finding that we're constantly having to face difficult customers, or we're not seeing eye to eye with our supervisor or manager, there's all sorts of challenging situations that we face. So we've all been in this situation, and it's important to show empathy. If we dismiss someone's feelings when they're in that state, it's only going to make it worse. If we acknowledge what they're feeling and can sympathise or be empathetic with it, we're probably more likely to get a positive response. So I had a guy, I'm working with a club at the moment. So it's a not-for-profit club, but they have a couple of parts that do make money. One of them is a restaurant. So there's a new restaurateur who's going to be taking over in a matter of weeks. And he rang me up to tell me he's going to be late for our appointment, and he sounded really flustered on the phone. And I said, "Are you all right, mate?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't have enough time and this is stressing me out. It's just another thing that's been added and I don't even know what it's about and I'm just feeling raw." Like, "Oh, okay. Well, you tell me when you're going to be there. I'll move my other appointments around and we'll make it work for you." So he got a time and he calmed down a bit. So applying empathy from the get-go, because I could see that he is going to be hard work if I don't take an empathetic approach. So that worked to a certain extent. Item number 2, respecting personal space. So turned up to the club and I said, "Right, mate, you got your keys? Can you show me the restaurant so I can work out what it's like in the kitchen and then what it's like out in the dining area?" And he goes, "Ugh, I don't have the keys." I went, "Okay, all good. Can you get them?" He's like, "No, it's just too hard. I can't do it. I don't have enough time." And then the other lady that I was with came and stood in the same area as us. And the area where we're standing was this tiny wee little cubicle behind a counter where the coffee machine is. So now there's 3 of us in this small space. He's already feeling like he's just on the edge. And we've now boxed him in. I went, not ideal for my personal safety and not ideal for him to actually start to calm down again, because he's just gone, "I don't have my keys. What's the blooming point of being here?" So I take a step back, which sees me outside of that zone and allows him to relax a little, although there's this other person who's standing there who's in his personal space somewhat, which is still not ideal, and I'm actually concerned for her safety if he was to kick off any further. But I at least move myself back as far as I can out of his area, and I actually relax the way I do it. I leant up on the bar around the side of it and just had a chat, like I was leaning on a fence post. So really changed the dynamic of the space between us two, knowing that there's still a third party that is probably going to amp the situation up. But at least I changed our dynamic and I kept him focused on me. All right, number 3. So I talked about how I leant up on the bar and used those non-verbal cues just to relax. You know, you can imagine the farmer who just, you know, chucks his arm up and just has a casual chat. So I did that kind of approach, which definitely helped, but it wasn't enough. I realized that my face was looking quite intense because I was going, oh, come on, you're wasting my time, dude. Whereas I needed to shut that part of my brain off, relax my face, and give him the gestures that we're all good and we'll work through this. So not only did I lean up against that bar, I actually went, oh yeah, all good, mate, all good, and just changed that lovely expression. Okay, number 4.
Is that the same one?
Yeah, that should be keeping your emotional brain in check. Go to the next one, see what happens. Oh, all right.
Oops. Sorry.
All right, well, number 4 should be keeping your emotional brain in check. So as I was saying, I was in that space where I really went, you're wasting my time, mate. Geez, I've come all the way out here, I've traveled 45 minutes. You don't even have the keys. You're in your own head and you're going around in circles and we're getting nowhere. And my face was saying that. So I changed that expression and I kept my emotional response to myself. Because I knew if I was going to challenge him on that and say, geez, well, this is a blooming waste of my time, he was going to go, waste of my time too, and get really quite annoyed. I'm pretty good at managing my emotional responses because I can pretty much see myself when I'm doing it and go, oh, there we go, Ange, you're having one of those moments, pull your head in. However, for most of us, it's not that easy. And when we're in that moment of feeling stressed because someone is coming at us, trying to flick our switch or poke the bear, it's blooming hard to be able to achieve this. So if you're ever finding yourself in that situation where your emotional brain's going, oh, I'm just so sick of this person, I want to get out of here, this is annoying the heck out of me, why am I bothering? Oh, I could tell them something that's really going to get them annoyed. Decide whether it's going to add value. Breathe. And then respond. I was walking around the mount with a mate the other day, and there was these group of 5 people on the base track, and they were taking over the whole base track. So, you know, COVID, keeping your distance becomes quite impractical when walking around this group. However, I could see that it had been long since they'd caught up. They were loving their interaction, and it was really lovely to see these group of people having a beautiful chat and big smiles on their face. So I shimmied around them, smiled, and went in acknowledgement of, oh, this looks awesome. Whereas the mate I was with, who I call Angry Bird, you might be aware of the cartoon or the movie of Angry Bird. He's a red bird and he's got big angry eyebrows and he just goes around just. So my mate is Angry Bird. And instead of seeing them for having a beautiful moment with their friends that they hadn't seen for a while, he went, you're in the middle of the base track and I can't get past and I've just got to keep walking through. So he gets himself in quite a state, probably annoying the other people as well, but more annoying himself and having his emotional brain take over into a point where he's probably going to do himself a blooming ulcer if he's not careful. So I say to him, breathe, just breathe. And he looked at me as if I was from another planet and said, breathe? You blooming do it all the time, Ange. I don't know what you're on about. How do you think I've stayed alive? If I'm not breathing, I'm not living. I went, all right. Not the right place, not the right time to have that discussion with him. hopefully it's the right place and the right time to have this discussion with you. So if we belly breathe, we can take ourselves out of that high stress situation. So our body naturally goes into fight or flight when facing an aggressor. It's brilliant that our body does this. It's perfect, because if that aggression is getting to the point where we're personally at risk, it's important that fight or flight kicks in. Fight, meaning we defend ourselves, or flight, we get the heck out of there. So perfect when physically facing a situation that's going to put us in high risk, or mentally when we're just at that point where we can't cope anymore and anything further is just going to tip us over the edge. So using fight or flight, brilliant. But if we choose not to, because the situation hasn't got us to that point yet, but our brain is suggesting we should be in fight or flight mode, we can breathe. Now, there's different ways of breathing, some of which are going to add value and others are going to find us in a situation where we just freak out even further. So we belly breathe. Chuck your hand on your chest and your hand on your stomach and breathe a long, deep breath in and a long, deep breath out. Ah, crap. Did you see that? My hand moved on my chest. I've stuffed it up. So my hand on my belly should be the one that goes in and out, rather than the hand on my chest. If I'm breathing deep in from my belly and deep out from my belly, my body goes from fight or flight mode into it's okay. Practicing that when facing an aggressor is bloody challenging, right? So I'm not suggesting it's going to be the best in every scenario, but practicing it when someone has just cut you off at the intersection and you're getting really annoyed at them, or at home when someone has pushed your buttons, or with your supervisor or manager, practicing that and actually doing it. Hand on chest, hand on belly. And anyone that's around you, well, maybe not when driving, we don't want two hands off the wheel, but anyone that's around you and sees you, they're going to go, what on earth are you doing? It's going to flick a switch in that situation, because it's going to distract the person who has caused that stress, that aggressor. It's going to distract them from their experience and look at you as if to say, what on earth is going on? And it also allows you to practice relaxing and breathing. So it's a way of keeping our emotional brain in check. I practice it at night. So I find it's about 1 in the morning and all I'm thinking about is my to-do list and the challenges that the next day has in store for me. Great. I should be sound asleep, getting a good night's sleep to be able to manage the next day, and my brain will not allow it. So I breathe. I put my hand on my chest, my hand on my belly, and I work out my belly breathing rather than my chest breathing. When I'm focusing on my breathing, I can't focus on that to-do list. And it puts my body in a relaxed state where I'm less likely to flick back to that to-do list and keep focusing on my breathing until I drift off. Not foolproof, but if we practice it enough, it'll become more readily accessible in your tools to be able to manage those situations, whether it's a sleepless night or whether you're in a high stress situation facing someone who's particularly aggressive. Sounds a bit woo-woo, but I tell you what, it can definitely add value the more you practice. There's several ways of doing it out there. If you do a bit of a Google search, you'll find a few good options on YouTube, one of which will probably suit you. All right, focusing on feelings. Very similar to point number 1, which I'm just going to go back to so I remember what it is, being empathetic. If we focus on feelings, we're identifying with what's going on for them and supporting them through this explosive behavior that they are presenting with. For them, logic gone out the window. They have gone into a state where there's no way that they're going to come back and think logically about this. They're just raw. So it's important to recognize that and to try find a way to get aligned with their feelings and support them. It's just about being blooming human, taking our emotional response out of it and recognizing that they're in a state which feels absolutely horrible for them. And how can we support that to help them realize they're okay, they're in a safe place, and we're all good here. So with my guy, who's the restaurateur, who's taking over in a few weeks and who's turned up with no keys, feels threatened by the topic of safety because he has no idea what the heck I'm on about, because he's never done health and safety in his 20 years as being involved in restaurants. His English is a second language. He's really struggling to understand what I'm talking about when I'm blurting on about blooming legislation. He's running on fumes. He's just exhausted, and this is just too much in his little head. I went back to our original conversation on the phone where he told me he was running late and went, okay, he's in a bad space. We're getting nowhere. And so I talked to him about his sleep. I went, oh, it must be really hard to focus on everything that you need to achieve in the next 3 weeks to get this business running when you lack sleep. Are you okay? What can I do to help you manage this? So he went, well, that's a weird thing to say, but okay, thanks, I think. So it changed his way of looking at it, because I wasn't coming at him with, these are your legal requirements, mate, and you have to do this and you have to do that and you've magically got to do it in the next 3 weeks. I went, are you okay? It looks like it's a really hard situation and I feel for you. Must be pretty hard in your head right now, especially with lack of sleep. What can I do to help you? Right, number 6. Ignore challenging questions. This guy threw me a doozy. He went, I haven't had to do this in 20 years in the restaurant industry. Why should I start now? I could have said to him, oh, well, mate, you're facing a 5-year imprisonment and $1 million fine. So that's a bloody good place to start, right? It wouldn't have added value. All I would have done is got his back up and poked the bear right back. So I ignored that question and I focused on what's going to get us to a better solution. I went, well, 20 years in the restaurant industry. Wow, you must have some massive amounts of experience. I went, well, yeah, of course. I went, brilliant. Can you tell me the top 3 risks that are apparent in a kitchen? He went, well, it's no construction site. They're not going to exactly get hit by a crane or a forklift. I'm like, yeah, you're 100% right. What are those risks though? He went, oh, well, it's slippery surfaces because oil and wet floors don't mix and we end up slipping over. I'm like, oh, perfect. It's sharps because we deal with knives and broken glass. Yes. And it's hot stuff like the hot plates and the deep fryer and what have you. I'm like, oh, wow. So not only did I ignore the challenging question, I got him onto a topic where he could show that he's able to solve his own problems. He knows the solution, he knows the risks, and that's the crux of the good old Health and Safety at Work Act. So he came to the conclusion himself that he can manage this. If I'd answered his challenging question, we would have got into a debate as to who's going to jail. Never going to work in that situation. So I have empathized with him. I've respected his personal space. I've used my non-threatening verbal cues. I have kept my own emotional brain in check. I have focused on how it feels for him, and I've avoided those challenging questions. Number 7. Setting limits. So when someone is in that headspace, they're not thinking logically, they're in crisis mode. So we've got to keep things really simple and fair. So just like when dealing with a toddler and they're having a meltdown, you ignore the meltdown and you get on with whatever it is you need to achieve. So they don't have the option of you feeding into that meltdown and it just escalating. Just go, right, so understand that you don't have the keys, in this case with the restaurateur, you're time poor, you're sleep deprived, and you're feeling pretty overwhelmed right now. So how about when you've got time in the next couple of weeks, I sit with you with my health and safety expertise, your expertise in the restaurant industry, and we come together and we formulate your health and safety, because it's going to help you in the long run with this business and 6 others that you plan on taking on, from what I hear. Oh yeah. Or I don't have much time, but yeah, that'd be good. So rather than escalating it further, I just made it clear and simple that we can get together at a time that's better and we can have a positive outcome from this rather than ending up further in this vicious cycle. All right, number 8. In this situation, I could have got on my little high horse and I could have insisted upon him having his health and safety well up to date because he's in business in 3 weeks. Would have got me absolutely nowhere, right? So rather than that, we went and looked at what is a good outcome for both of us. It's sitting down at a time, he's got the right headspace and we can work through this and get the outcome that the club expects, which is him getting on board with health and safety and sorting out his health and safety manual. Woohoo! So I chose wisely what I wanted as an outcome, rather than saying, right, well, I want to get in that kitchen, so you're going to have to go get your keys. We're going to take an extra hour out of your busy day and you're going to get your health and safety together right now. Would have got me nowhere. So we reached a conclusion we were both happy with and he could relax a bit more. At this point, number 9 comes in. He needed time to process everything and make a good decision. If I had kept talking and saying, so what do you want to do? Do you want to meet next week? When are you free? He wouldn't have had his own headspace because he's not following any form of logic. He's exhausted and he's now extremely agitated by this conversation. So he needed that opportunity to just have time to think, process, and work out for himself the best way forward. And so for him, it wasn't setting a time and date then and there because he wasn't in the headspace to do it, but it was accepting that there's an olive branch and she's willing to help, and it will be at the club's expense, which is pretty blooming generous for a contractor. So I just gave him that time to process all that and then go, yeah, that'd be good. Ange, can I catch up with you next week? I'll send you a time and date that works for me. Like, blooming awesome. Love it. I will see you next week at a time that suits you. So giving him that chance just to breathe and think allowed him to make a good decision. All right, which brings us to 10. Allowing time to make a good decision. So by having that space to breathe, by giving him very clear limits and avoiding those challenging questions and giving him a better way forward, he could make the right decision, which was to catch up with me at a later date when he's got the headspace and work through this. All right, I think we've got a video. Which hopefully will start. While we see well it thinks and sees if it's going to start. How are you guys going? Questions, comments, feedback, examples? Sick of hearing me talk? What do you reckon, Kathy? Do you reckon that's going to start or?
Oh, isn't that, have you not got the video on?
No.
Oh, bum, sorry. I'm playing it on my screen, I'm fine.
What's happening for others? Can you see it?
Okay, apologies. I don't know why that is. I wonder if it's because...
Can you share your screen and bring that one up?
Oh, I'm wondering if that's what I do. Okay. If I shut down the PowerPoint. Okay. So maybe I'll try. Oh, I know what I'll do. Just hold. Okay. The problem is there's no problem. I just have to figure this out. Right, that's on. Sorry.
Oh, it's all
I
good.
didn't realise that was going to happen. Stop that. Now go back to Zoom.
You guys want to take a couple of minutes to grab a water or what? Yeah.
Right, I'll try this again. I'll share the screen and I'll do this and share. Can you see a different screen now?
Aha, yes.
That's it? Right, we're in business then. Sorry, I'll start it properly. Right, tell me if you're okay. Is it okay?
We don't have sound.
That's a problem then. That's strange. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not sure how to make that work.
Oh, good.
Anybody got any clues?
No, sorry.
No. Okay, so I am screen sharing. No, sorry. I can't. It'd probably take me too long and you all get bored and go to sleep or leave.
So there will be a couple of links within the documentation and you can have a look at the way better illustrations than on video than I'm probably giving via Zoom. So what you've reflected on then too, there's two of them that we're putting in this. You're welcome to give me a call and talk it through. All right, so the last tip of today is knowing yourself. So we might get back to that PowerPoint if we can. Well, Kathy works it out. So yeah, knowing yourself. If we're having a bad day and someone is having a row at us, it's going to be really hard to keep ourselves in check. We all have our moments. We're human. It's part of being human. So unless you work out where you're at in that day and you've thought about your triggers and how quickly you're going to be triggered, it'll be harder to self-manage. So taking that time on your drive into the organisation, have a think about where you're at and where your headspace is, and keep reflecting during the day where at all possible. And if you've got someone that has that, you've got that relationship with, where you can say, oh boy, today is not my day. If we are facing a challenging situation, I'm not going to be the best at dealing with this. I'm going to need your help. So then you've pre-thought about it, and you know that all it's going to take is the tiniest thing to go, oh yeah, I'm not going to cope well today and I just need some support. But we don't always have that support. So think about how you're going to manage your own triggers, and whether it's breathing or having that 5 minutes to go for a walk that day and just take yourself out of that work environment or that organisation environment, taking time to take a break for a drink of water or a coffee or something to eat, and work out the best way of being able to manage your own headspace. Not always easy, and we're human, and we're not always going to get it 100% right. And if we're having that bad time, really important to be able to have a chat with someone. I often get phone calls when a client's just having a bad day. They don't want to do anything with health and safety. They just want to have a chat about the challenges that they're facing that day. And just to hear themselves think allows them to hit the reset so they can go and deal with the challenges that they face. If you're one of those people that doesn't have anyone and you just want to have a chat, give us a call. The amount of calls that I got during lockdown was quite impressive, actually, because everyone is in their own bubble, and it heightened a lot of these emotional responses. They weren't having to deal with the challenges of the members of the public or their clients or customers or managers, but they were having to be in their own space, and a lot found that blooming difficult. I'm finding that all it takes, so I've got a timber provider, and I've got clients that come in, grab their timber, go through the area, pay, and then leave again. And now the guy that's serving them at the counter after they've got their timber he takes things really personally. It's just his personality is to absorb any negativity that comes off any of the customers. And on this occasion, the customer expected him to be a quantity surveyor and know the lengths that he needs off a plan that didn't give any details. Now, my guy is not a QS. He is really good at retail, not at all capable of measuring off a plan that's got no details and telling him what timber he needs and what lengths he needs. And the person that was expecting this of him was really angry and upset. The third party that's also sitting in that same area, because they never work alone in this situation, came in and went, "Hey mate, how's it going? How can I help?" and diffuse the situation, because that employee was just getting overwhelmed by it. We knew that that was one of his triggers, and we know that we always need a second person to help out, because he just implodes, and we'll take it home with him and we'll have very bad sleep that night. In fact, I saw him a few days later on the mount, and we ended up talking about it for about 30 minutes during our walk. This guy is 60 odd, and to look at him, you wouldn't think he's that fat, big round tummy, eats a lot of pies. But honestly, we walked up, down, around, and then down the street, because he just was really enjoying that opportunity to have that conversation and to get it all out, what was in his head. So he learned a bit about himself, about what his triggers are, and we talked about some coping strategies for him around breathing and relying on that other salesperson to help him out when he's facing those challenging situations, so he doesn't get himself so deep. And also by having that lunchtime walk, because he knew that when he goes out with his team at lunchtime and has a chat and they walk around Daisy Hardwick, he feels good. And because he's getting home in the dark as we get into the cooler months, he doesn't have the opportunity to walk after work, and he goes to work very early. So that's his opportunity to de-stress, get some exercise, and have that time where he feels good. So we put those tips into practice, which means that he's now going to be better at self-managing when he's facing those challenging situations at work. All right. Krista, hey, would you mind sharing? I understand that you might have, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but you might have an example of the kind of situations that occur in your organisation. And would you mind sharing one, if that's okay? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Angela. We deal with pretty high risk situations all the time. There's numerous ones that come to mind. So one that happened recently, well, maybe a year or so ago, we were running one of our surf therapy programs, and we were in our clinical group session. And one young man had been just not in a great space all day. I think he was kind of just little by little was getting a bit more agitated. And come the group session time, he was already in a bit of a heightened state, and he asked a question about, we were reviewing some of the things with the boys towards the end of the day, and he asked a question, and the question he was asking wasn't really relevant. It wasn't the purpose of why he was asking that question. He was trying to kind of get it in, and he was looking for a reaction because he wanted to spark up. So he asked me a question, and I attempted to de-escalate it and kind of divert it, but he sparked up anyway and started kind of swearing, threatening, stood up. And this was in front of about 12 of us. So it was a pretty intense situation where other people's safety and my safety was kind of at an immediate risk, because this young man was threatening violence, was swearing, was yelling. We were in it was a confined space, not a small space, but still our group room. So that was, did you want me to explain beyond that, or just kind of set the situation of?
I'm going to ask you a few questions on that one. Thank you. That's a perfect example. So he's given you a challenging question, which you have tried to avoid, but he's continued to spark up, and you could see it was escalating all day. The environment you're in, has it got a one point of entry and exit?
Yeah, which is pretty easily accessible.
And the other people that's in that group, how many of them are staff members that are trained to manage that kind of situation, and how many are other clients?
There were 3 staff, including myself. And there would have been, I think, 6 clients in total. So 5 other clients. And there was a guest speaker as well, a volunteer. Okay.
So you've got a few people that can back you up, and you've probably got a good plan B. Wait, no, that's an assumption, Ange. Plan A is to de-escalate. That's clearly turning to custard in this situation. So plan B, what does that look like?
Well, plan B has since been developed quite strategically since this incident at our workplace. There wasn't really a plan B. This situation really highlighted the fact that I was trying to navigate this on my own when other people actually needed to step in at that point and kind of take control and remove the young man in a safe way. So luckily, I think just from these 11 tips, I used silence a bit instead of trying to kind of, not challenge him and go back and forth and kind of put our co-papa into place, like, hey, okay, this is actually not another co-papa. He ended up at some point, he ended up leaving the room, and another staff member followed him and had a talk with him outside in a one-on-one sense. And then they rejoined the group in about 10 or 15 minutes. So probably, we learned a lot of what probably should have happened, but we were also thankful that there was no violence, because his words and threatening to me was really triggering for a lot of the other people in the room. So it was really great that none of them actually, it could have just been a whole fist fight between about 8 people.
And you've highlighted exactly what we tend to do. We wait until a situation has occurred and gone, that's not ideal. How do we avoid this happening next time? What is our plan B? So we can use all the tips and tricks, 11 tips and tricks, and sometimes they just don't bloom and work. Someone is in a bad space no matter what we do, and they're looking to kick off. When this happens, we need that plan B. That's when your fight or flight response adds a heck of a lot of value, but only adds a good value if we've got a good system within our team, within our organization, within the space that we're working, to be able to get ourselves out and to bring everything down a notch. Now, if that person was in a one-on-one setting and they kicked off, and the person can remove themselves and they decide to throw a chair through a window, well, they throw a chair through a window. Not going to hurt anyone else, but themselves in this case. That's fine, but when you've got 6 other people in the room, that's not okay, because then that group is put at risk. So with 3 staff, it's a great number, and I'm sure most organisations don't have that lovely possibility of having that many people, but 1 can go deal with the individual once he's been removed in this case, which is amazing that you managed to achieve that, well done, and 2 can work with the group. But that 1 that's then with that individual, how do they get back up if or when they need to, because things continue to escalate? So important to have our plan B. I learnt this well and truly during a pack house incident. So I worked in kiwifruit, doing good old health and safety, and one of my favourite days was with the drug dogs. So we take the drug dog and the handler around the site, always escorted because it's high risk with them getting run over or stuck in a cool store or what have you. So we're taking this this dog and handler around, and this dog is extremely lazy. So you expect a drug dog to, you know, get really excited when they indicate on drugs and their tail's going and they're like, yeah, boss, it's there. Not this dog. This dog is the opposite. It gives the tiniest little head nod to indicate on someone. And so gave this tiny little head nod to indicate on this guy. We take this guy out of the pack house and into the outside environment, and we moved him around the side of the shed so no one else could see, you know, protecting his dignity and giving him some privacy and making sure that we didn't have the whole line stopping work and looking at us. So everyone continued to work and we removed this guy. He seemed fairly good about it at that point. But we got outside and we walked around the side of the shed. I had my back against that shed wall. This lazy drug dog had this absolute habit of nudging my knees open, so I had my legs wide apart, and it would fall asleep between my blooming legs. The laziest drug dog I've ever met, and so strange. And you could not stop it from doing so. It would just stay there, nudging your legs until you open them, and it could just go have a nap. So I'm up against a wall. I have this lazy giant dog between my legs, and I am in a position where it's not easy to move. This guy kicks off. I see he's got an ankle bracelet, so he's only allowed at work and at home. So by the dog indicating on him, it's actually threatening not just his livelihood, but his future. And this dog, of course, is indicated in an extremely lazy manner. So he uses the route of we're picking on him, and the dog did not indicate on him, and he isn't holding anything. He's getting a wee bit aggressive, but not too bad. And I'm finding myself in a kind of precarious situation. It's bloody hard to move though with this dog between my legs. So the handler, who's ex-police, goes, can you tip out your pockets? And tips out his pockets and we find drugs. So now he knows that he's done. So it's hard for him to come back on it. He's found with drugs. He is now not able to, most likely outcome, not able to earn an income, and he's in breach of his conditions for his ankle bracelet. So he goes, what are my options here? My options are to try and intimidate. Well, I ain't going to choose the handler because, you know, he's ex-police, he looks big, looks like he's going to handle himself. But little old Ange, well, she's got her back against the wall. She's got this dog who's blooming asleep between her legs, and I am able to tower over her and really intimidate. He's got his fist clenched. He's very close to just taking a swing at me, and he is yelling abuse at me. I'm looking down as this dog is still asleep between my legs. I'm noticing I've got a wall behind me and I can't bloom and move. I'm noticing if I duck and go out, he is going to collect me with his fist. And so my only option, now I've got myself in an absolute pickle, is to stay calm and try, ignore the challenging questions, set really clear limitations, allow time for reflection, and hope to heck that he chooses the sensible option of removing himself from the situation. So the clear limits that we set is, hey, we're not making any decisions now. This is something that we will bring up in a further meeting. So you're not on trial, mate. This is just us getting some information, and it appears that what's just come out of your pockets is likely to be drugs, and we'll proceed on that basis, but nothing is set in stone at this stage. So he, I don't know how, but he managed to decide in himself to, all right, by hitting Ange, I'm not going to get very far, so I'll back off and back up the truck and allow this conversation. And then we got him home safely, ready for a meeting in the coming days. But I had done bugger all to help myself in that situation. I'd backed myself into a corner. I couldn't easily remove myself, so fight or flight was not going to work. I can't fight to save myself. I would add no value. So my only option for me personally is to run. I can't run because I'm backed in a corner. What the heck was I thinking? So it was at this point that I went, time for a debrief. And I afterwards caught up with the ex-policeman who's the drug dog handler and said, what could I have done different? And we talked about the way I positioned myself and how I got myself into that pickle and what I can do different to prevent that from happening. So I had the luxury of a big open space I could have chosen. Not always will you have that luxury. So it's actually about understanding the environment that you work in and then choosing the best way forward. That plan B is blooming important. You're on this training session now because you know that the chances are you're going to come across some pretty ugly, aggressive behaviour. It's not why we got into what we do as a volunteer or for work. And it's certainly not what we want to have as an outcome of dealing with this behaviour on a regular basis. But some of us, it's part of what we do. So it's important to have good solutions around it and good plan Bs. Debrief after a situation, whether it escalates or not, having that conversation with the team going, oh shit, that could have turned ugly. What are we going to do different to prevent that from happening in the future? Getting your plan and fine-tuning it each time a situation arises. So we go, aha, well, we managed 2 out of 3 things really well, but there's still room for improvement on that third. What are we going to do in that situation? So if we make sure we've got good plan Bs in place, when our de-escalation fails because this person is going to ramp up no matter what, or people, then at least we've got a backup plan and we know that we've got a way out most of the time. Thanks, Krista. I really put you on the spot there. I do appreciate it. Has anyone else got any examples they'd be willing to share with us? And there was silence. All right, let me see. So thinking about plan B a bit further, looking at distance between you and safe passage out, between you and the aggressor or aggressors, and a safe passage out. Who can you call on for backup? Do you have a panic button? Do you have a colleague in close proximity that can assist? Who have you got around you that can help? Or are you working alone? And what do we need in place? There's all sorts of tools that my lone workers utilise, including a panic button. One can be, even behind an ID badge, one can be set off that gives a lovely loud noise and freaks the person out, which usually puts them into flight mode themselves and they take off. Or another is a silent alarm, which renders assistance through a third-party monitored provider. But either way, of whatever situation you've got, it's only going to work if you've actually thought through that plan B and you've practiced a few scenarios and see what's worked and what hasn't. If that's not in your pocket, it's not going to add value. So 11 tips and tricks, and know that when it turns to custard, because we're dealing with humans and we're human ourselves, what's our plan B? With this, you are welcome to give me a call. You'll be able to run through some scenarios with me and look at what you've been able to achieve with your de-escalation, which it sounds like some of you have well achieved. and then what hasn't worked and what challenges that you've got in your workplace or your organisation, and look at ways that we can actively manage that. And I can help you out through a conversation, or even pop in and have a look at your facility. Have I missed anything, Kathy?
Don't think so. I'm just interested if anybody has got any questions, specific questions of Ange. Now's the opportunity to ask them. Did you get the answers that you wanted when you first registered for this little session? What did you do after that, Krista, with that young man?
Well, we learned a lot from that. That's probably been one of the most high-risk situations we've been in. There's been a lot, but that one's kind of at the top. So we, from that, had major debriefs and kind of got some real solid plan B, plan C, plan Ds in place for if anything like that were ever to happen again. Like, everyone knows their part and what they should be doing. So essentially what we learned from that is that a coworker in that particular situation, one of my male coworkers who was in the room, should have stepped in quicker and kind of taken force, and not taken force, but said, hey bro, let's go outside and talk about this. That should have happened earlier, because it kind of was escalating in the group situation, and I was trying to manage it, and all eyes were on me, and no one else, everyone was kind of watching to see, oh, what's happening here? Krista's being sworn at and threatened, and this young guy's getting more and more and more, but it's like nobody knew what to do. So it all happened quite quickly, as these things do. So from there, they did come back into the room, but we've since realized that there's certain situations that are automatic and instant stand downs. So if something like that were to happen again, we would not be bringing that young man back into the room. That person outside with him would be saying, kind of calming him down and de-escalating in the moment, but then taking that young person home with the understanding of, we will give you a call later and have a chat about what's happened and where to from here. But bringing him back into the room, into our kind of our safe space of the group therapy, was not the right decision. But because we didn't have a plan in place, the coworker, he was just kind of trying to figure it out, and he's calm, so we'll bring him back in. But for me, it was quite upsetting, because I'm up there leading this group session and I've had this massive personal attack, and then they leave, and I'm just trying to act like everything's fine, but in my brain I'm like, oh my God, what the heck? And then when they come back in, I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. But we got through the day, and learned a hell of a lot of, just the gaps of, that's once in a blue moon that something like that happens, but you've still got to be prepared, and everybody's got to know what their place is and who's doing what if and when those things happen.
Yeah. So has anybody else had similar situations or that type of aggressive behaviour that you have had an issue dealing with? I guess you don't want that sort of thing happening.
If nobody else has, just come hang out at Live for More, because we have it all the time.
You can give them the experience. Okay.
Hi.
Who's that?
Hi. It's Rhonda.
Oh, Rhonda.
Hi. Look, I just wanted to share something. So, a work colleague and I, we work with a particular whānau. My work colleague works with the dad, and I work with the mum. So we would normally meet with them separately, first off, and then bring them together. As always assessing risk prior to bringing them together, in relation to what the conversations are that we have prior to bringing them together. But on one occasion, things did get a little heated, and we were able to de-escalate that, and it was really just around, just bringing them back to, they're here for their family and looking at solutions. But then we separated them off, and we were able to work with them like that, rather than, because it was very much he said, she said, and they were going at each other. So separating them off and then having that space, and sometimes that doesn't always happen. We don't, we don't actually have, or some organisations don't have the capacity to be able to have two people working within the family as such. I think when the case first came to our attention, assessing what the situation was, we were able to make that decision pretty quickly around working with them separately. So I think too that it's made me think about, so we've moved from the collective into a new building. And we've actually had to have a really good look at what some of our health and safety things are, because we're in our own individual building now. So and we're still sort of finding our feet around what that looks like, and it's just come to mind now that we do have a plan B, but we actually probably need to be practicing that. We talk about that in a meeting. We've practically, in the meeting and all working together, we seem to have refined that, or we have that plan, but we actually need to put that into action and just see if that's actually going to work, and just go through those motions. And yeah, I like the fact that, and this is always the case anyway, that you debrief after every situation. Yeah, so just wanted to place some feedback there on that. But yeah, I think the big thing really first off is, getting to really know your clients, assessing risk and safety first off. Yeah, that's probably one of the big key things in the work that we do anyway. Yeah.
Love it. So yeah, plan, do, review. So you've got your planning in place. It's now practicing it and going, yeah, what works and what doesn't. I definitely find that certain people in certain situations manage it extremely well, and others just go and fall apart because of past experiences and what have you. So amazing to have the opportunity to try it, practice it, and see what's going to work and what's going to turn to custard and what we need to do different. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Now's the chance.
It looks like it. You're welcome to just give me a call and have a chat, and we can run through anything that you aren't comfortable sharing in this Zoom environment. But yeah, plan, do, review. We've got our 11 tips, and when we're in the right space to be able to manage de-escalation, we tend to do it fairly well, or we learn when we've turned to custard, like when I had my back against the wall and the guy just about taking a swing at me. So we can do that to the best of our ability, but then if we don't have that plan B, that plan C, that plan D that Krista was talking about, it's going to be blooming challenging when that person or those people will not de-escalate with us, no matter what we try. So yeah, feel free to give us a call, let me know what you need, talk through anything, and if there's no more questions, I think that's probably us.
So I will immediately, almost, email you out the handout. And also I would really appreciate some feedback on the session. The way we make the sessions better is by your feedback. So there'll be a little Survey Monkey link in the email as well for you to fill out. Please just take probably 2 minutes to do it. That would be great. Thank you. So thanks, Ange.
All good.
We'll see you soon, or we'll see you all soon at one time or another. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Ange.
All good.